Hello again, and welcome to RP-0 America. So we have our first probe that is approached. It's within the sphere of influence of Venus now, so you can see the probe and the sun there, and down there you can actually see part of Venus. So I've set up some alarm clocks, so I've already noted time to closest approach, and I have a window for it. I've renamed the craft, so even if I'm just going to steal historic names from craft, at least that's useful, and I've coded what it is, so V for Venus, F for flyby, and so that's what it's going to be doing. And this craft probably can't capture to Venus, but I'll do my best attempt. I'll expend all the fuel I have, but I'm currently a day and change away from, nearly 2 days away from closest approach to Venus, and we also have this other probe that is 17 hours away from the sphere of influence of Venus. So I'm going to, I guess, warp till that, and it's going to alert me, and I'll jump over to that craft. All right. It's just really eating electricity, which it probably should have done on the trip to Venus. I shouldn't have been able to bring the rest of this Agena with me, just electric charge wise, but that's okay. Let's see, so it's getting closer. Let's just warp some time. So you can see it's getting bigger, and we're not sure what that node was from. I'll just remove that. But we are approaching that, and so it's gotten larger during this last bit of time, but we're definitely nowhere near closest approach. You can see we're still about a day away, and so I'm going to jump to this other ship, because it's about to enter the sphere of influence of Jupiter as well. I also, kind of off screen, I'll launch it soon in a video to come. I designed another launcher, with small modifications to the one that I just used, that's capable of throwing a smaller payload to Mercury, which is excellent. It's not going to have nearly as much fuel, obviously. It's, like I said, it's the same. I'm still within the same mass limitations because I'm pretty much using the same launcher I've already used. But it's going to throw a smaller amount of payload. Close alarm. And have we entered the... Not quite yet. Pretty close, though. Haven't quite entered. So it's going to throw a smaller amount of mass, hopefully for a flyby of Mercury. At least I'll give it an attempt, but I'm only going to try to send one craft, see. Because I know that it takes a huge amount of mass or a very clever trajectory in order to get in orbit of Mercury anyway. So whereas with Venus, with a bit of practice here, I can probably do it. So I have a mod that, here, let me pull up close that, automated science sampler. I haven't run through all the settings yet, but I'll be doing that in a bit. And that should let me, it should, kind of act, I think it was Science Alert or other mods that have existed, where it will help me to capture science. Okay, so it only caused that experiment to pop up the one time. I was trying to reset this to get it to pop again. Transfer science disabled. Yeah, I won't run through those settings right now. But right-clicking it seems to trigger it. Okay, so something, what was it? It said a gravity scanner. Okay, orbital perturbations, that data. Okay, well, there's data there. That might have been the experiment that it was suggesting that I do. Record impact data. No, I've already captured plenty of science. Log temperature. Okay. Okay, this craft has a lot less mass, a lot less delta V with it, because it was launched by by a much lighter launcher, and so it still had to spend some of its own fuel to get the encounter with Venus. So we're still in interplanetary space, but pretty shortly. Oh yeah, three hours. Fair enough. It looks like that point is far away, but it's not that far away. There we go. All right, so now we're also in the sphere of influence of Venus, and so let's transfer some science back. Science, the automated science sampler, which has a great acronym, popped up, told us a bunch of science, and so now we're capturing it and sending it back to Earth. And once that is all complete, I'll jump. Well, actually, while that completes, I will create. So this is Ranger 1. Ranger 1, closest approach. For ascending, descending, apoperi. Oh, okay. Approach. And so it says a day and 18 hours, and that matches that. All right, so I've created the alarm and it's for pretty close. I think I'm going to actually lose this one into the atmosphere, which I think I'm okay with because I've got 2 probes that are going to fly. Yeah, I'm not going to get any new biome or anything. So yeah, since I have 2 probes, I may as well try to do slightly different things with them. So this one will skim into the atmosphere. And the way I know that isn't from having a great memory, because I do not. One of these things, info, so this tells me about my current vessel. Oh, there we go. If I select, there we go, if I select Venus, it gives me this option, which tells me that the atmospheric height of Venus starts at 150 kilometers. So if I'm skimming at under 100 kilometers, I'm definitely going to hit the atmosphere of Venus. So this probe is going to die in the atmosphere of Venus. Let's see, Ranger 1, Ranger 2, so let me switch back to the other one. So I'm currently also reading a book about all the really in-depth information about all of the probes that have been sent to Mars. They're really interesting. So the way that we found out how thick the atmosphere, the atmospheric height and scale and such of Mars was by our experiment. For some reason, maybe this is an experiment I have on this craft and not on the other one, I don't know. Transmit, but I'll transfer all these as well, getting some new science out of it, was that the probe flew in such a path that Mars got between Earth and the craft, and so either a radio signal sent from the craft or a radio signal sent from Earth was measured from the other direction, and the amount and manner that the signal was attenuated or lost as it passed through the atmosphere of Mars, just as the craft was passing behind and then coming back out from behind Mars. They used that to measure the atmospheric, some of the basic atmospheric properties of Mars, just how thick the atmosphere was at all, and some of their original guesses were way off. They were guessing that, optimistically, that the pressure of Mars's atmosphere was much, much higher. And so I imagine something similar was done with Venus during the earliest flybys of Venus. Okay, so we're 20 hours away, so I'll just switch to this view. So actually, I'm going to create a maneuver node. Well, set as target. I'm going to create a maneuver node because we plan to burn all of our delta V when we're closest to Venus. As that's our best chance of getting a capture, even though I don't think we quite have enough delta V. I tried, but with the craft we have, we just didn't quite have the delta V. Oh, maybe, who knows? Maybe we will. Only one way to find out. Definitely, obviously, this number, which is what looks like we need, is much larger than this, but there's also to be accounted for. So this is telling you the delta V of the top probe itself, which doesn't have full tank there because this has to be under the mass that the controllable core there can handle, which it might even be above. I don't remember. I might have screwed that up. You have to be careful in designing your craft. Do as I say, not as I do, and make sure you kind of pull it off and check at each active stage that you do have the avionics you'll need. But we also have some hydrazine left in this, so I'll start burning a bit before we approach that. Oh, we are currently in mild time warp, so let's find Venus, there we go, with our eyes, and let's approach it until, let's say, an hour or so beforehand, and then maybe see if I can start burning some of this hydrazine to get a little bit of a slowdown. Maybe not a whole hour, so this is only going to take a minute. So let's say, I don't know, half an hour, around half an hour. I just don't want to have such an effect on our path that I make it so that Venus kills us, because right now I'm just above the 150. So alright, so let's tell it to go retrograde. No. Okay, so I want these tanks to be, I don't want to lock the tanks, but I don't believe I set up an action group so I could turn off that RCS, but I do not want the fuel up there being expended right now. Right now I just want to completely, drain, get everything I can out of this part of the craft. Whoa, and it's swinging a little drunkenly. So with a recent MechJeb update, it definitely does control the craft during ascent better, and I might make use of that for my Mercury craft launch, perhaps, rather than a script. Because I've been working on KOS and KRPC scripts, and so it's Agathorn and Bevo LJ. So plenty of opportunities to show off some of those awesome scripts. Theirs more awesome than mine. I just haven't had the time, unfortunately. And of course they have more programming skill than me to boot. Yeah, I definitely want to make use of some of those scripts, but I might also show off how awesome MechJeb is again. In 1.1, MechJeb has given me some trouble in Ascent, as I believe you may have seen in some of the videos I've done since I moved this career to 1.1. Okay, so that number's increasing, which isn't ideal, but it's, you know, it's not a bad thing. So yeah, we do have a bit of hydrazine in this, and I could do a calculation to figure out exactly how much delta V it has, but yeah, I'm okay not knowing. So I'm just right now kind of just trying to guess pitch and keep an eye on this, because I don't want to increase that much. I also don't want to decrease it. So I'm just trying to figure out what is the best. Oh, right, that's for the maneuver node, so when we're lowest. That's what the target is for. Sorry, total brain farts. I just haven't been inside KSP a ton in the last week or two. Okay, so there we go. So we found a pitch here that, weird. Yeah, when I'm hovered over this, it won't take keyboard commands for me. Interesting. Okay, so I just want to find something that doesn't drastically increase or decrease that. So I've got the engine ramped up to max, so let's find a position that feels somewhat safe, sure, that feels good, and maybe a little more over this way. Okay, perhaps that's good enough. All right, and then I'm just going to turn up the time warp just a little bit, because there's a pretty good amount of hydrazine left in this tank. So as long as it just wobbles back and forth around that, it doesn't, isn't losing position. Okay, I'm going to try a little more that way, because now we're almost 20 kilometers above that atmosphere, and I want to scrape a bit closer. Okay, that's good enough. And now I went to max time warp. So yeah, we're starting to lower that periapsis a little bit as we approach. But what about our actual orbital velocity? It's still increasing as we approach, which makes sense, because this is, while we still have a bit of delta V in this, it just is a really weak thrust. So, oh, and space high over Venus's highlands. I will take that. Thank you, Mr. Science. And so we're slowly eating away at how much delta V we will end up needing. So not too bad. Although, it would be nice to capture this into an orbit of Venus. In practice, for something that I really designed to get into orbit of Venus, I'd be much more careful, because you'd want a certain path. Realistically, where I really care about getting something in orbit of the other planets is once I've started unlocking some of the scan set parts, which I look forward to greatly, because then you can start capturing a lot of science for your career, but also useful information for future landing attempts. You can get the height of the terrain, things like that. Oh, so we're approaching that. We're below that 150 now, which is a little worrisome. Oh, I didn't decrease the time warp before making that maneuver. Fair enough. There we go. That'll be good enough. We're getting there. So good, not decreasing it. All I care is I want this to be above 150 when we are at our closest approach, which we are approaching fairly quickly. According to this, it's less than an hour till we get there. Burning out this hydrazine. And it takes a while. So I could have added, say, more RCS thrusters on this or something like that, or I could just let this fuel go to waste. Either of those is a valid option. But I want to try to make my best use of the resources that I happen to have brought along on this craft before I abandoned this handy dandy Agena transfer vehicle. Yeah, it was the Agena B. I think the other one might have I might have moved to the Agena D tank, which just had slightly different mass, slightly different amount of fuel, things like that. Yeah, my Mercury craft, so I've switched away from using hydrazine for this part of it. It's pretty much it's the same bus and such, but I switched to using two fuels, which gives me a higher RCS, or gives me a higher ISP for the RCS, basically more efficiency, more delta V delivery for the same amount of fuel mass, which is awesome, and exactly what I need for a Mercury mission. Because to get to Mercury, as you can see, I set up a node here to replace my old one, where I need. That time's approaching. I already have the craft constructed, so I don't really have to worry too much. But it requires a lot more delta V than it required to throw something towards Venus or Mars, which is exactly why fewer missions try to go to Mercury than. One of the many reasons why fewer missions try to go to Mercury than to Venus or Mars, because the more delta V you need, that means the smaller, effectively, a payload you can throw that way. And in practice, I think only one thing has ever gone into Mercury orbit. I could be wrong about that, but I do know that something that's being experimented with and successfully so in terms of Mercury missions is doing this complex flyby of other planets. So say flying by Venus and also re-flying by Earth again after you've left Earth in order to change the direction and velocity of the craft such that it bleeds off its velocity to approach Mercury by using less fuel, but instead doing these gravitational assists, which are really cool. I'm pretty sure I saw Bevo do a video where he did that, and I want to kind of learn his process, watch that video again, see if I can do that, because ultimately if I want to do a human flyby of Venus and return to Earth, I'll need to be pretty good at that technique. So I need to get at least the minimum level abilities with that mission if I plan to do a Venus or a Mars flyby of a human craft. Oh, what is it? We are out of, we ran out of electricity. That is weird. Fair enough. Oh, I see. Possibly in part because of where the sun is relative to how we're currently pitched. So, and the RCS is on. Oh, I can. Looks like you can. I was able to throttle down the RCS, but not back up with no electricity. So fair enough. I am a filthy cheater. I feel like that's the cheat. You have to say that every time you cheat. And so there we go. I gave myself some free electricity. I'm not sure how I didn't notice it running out. I need to check if what was it? Amperes or various other mods for giving you battery reminders and battery assistance, because I'm bad with batteries, very bad. Of course, I shouldn't have brought this Agena along at all. In terms of we're getting a little too far down, below 150. Sorry, most of this video is just me rambling while I burn out this RCS. So, but this is really what I will need to do in order to potentially get this in orbit around Venus. So, fingers crossed that this was enough. Okay, so I'll need to pitch back up this way a bit. I'm just kind of doing it experimentally, keeping an eye on how this number is affected by how I'm angled. I've nearly expended all the fuel here, and then doing the final RCS burn in order to get into orbit probably won't take too long. So yeah, we've eaten a bit into how much delta V we need to deliver in order to slow down into Venus orbit. There we go, so it's heading back up again. Yeah, I mean, I can just as easily do it from this view as well, I suppose. So we're approaching, our closest point is going to be on the dark side, but very shortly after that we're going to arc across a lit side of Venus. And while we approached, we had some pretty good views of the lit side of Venus as well. But right now it's mostly darkened. Very good, very nearly out of hydrazine now on this stage. Yeah, hydrazine is a really useful and neat. It's a monopropellant. It's not just hypergolic. It's not just it's not cryogenic, so you don't need to cool it on the way. It also is just one fuel that you run over a catalyst, and so you just need kind of a trick to catalyze the breakdown of hydrazine into hydrogen and nitrogen, and it delivers a not unimpressive amount of delta V. Okay, so very nearly out of fuel, so let's just angle it back a little this way because we ended up at a bit higher of an altitude, and we're still increasing speed substantially as we come down. But yeah, it's just this little bit of thrust for a few minutes that we had remaining out of this service module. So Agena has potentially given us the extra little oomph we need to get into even a loose Venus orbit, which would be a world first for this space program. Okay, hydrazine here. Just a little more warp. Is that still it's still increasing in height, but that's okay. It's not going to have an insane amount of effect, I don't think. And there we go, out of hydrazine. Okay, so turn those off, throttle down, and so let's. Still have batteries, hydrazine. All right, so let's separate craft. Good. I still see I'm below the 200. So this craft has to stay under 200 kilograms because I'm using the early controllable core, whereas the other one has to be under 300 kilograms because I'm using a different core. I'm using the Ranger core. Okay, so that was 650. So I guess the calculation of truth. So how much delta V do I end up needing in order to get it's just the reverse of, when you leave Earth, whereas small amounts of delta V have a huge effect there. But just to get a loose capture, I would need 500 meters per second of delta V. All right. And how much do I have? So that's part of it, and that's the other part. So very close. We do have enough delta V, it looks like, which is awesome. So I will do that capture burn in the next video, since this one already is long. So I just used a little bit of the RCS and NIST to oomph it away. Right, so thanks for watching. This has been RP-0 America as we approach Venus, and we'll potentially put the first craft in orbit of Venus. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.